Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to see you here today. It's been a while since I've seen some of you in the program, and I'm so excited to be sharing this topic with you today because we all know how important networking is, and it's a pillar of the higher landing program, a very important one. And I think from my experience, we confuse a lot of networking with socializing, and most people, if you're like myself, you're an introvert. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. Don't like networking. And so when I reconnected with Sarah and realized that this was such a hugely developed area of expertise that she had just gathered over, I think she just does it naturally. I asked her to prepare this webinar for us. So she's very generously offered this just for you. And so she's going to be talking about how to make networking basically less painful. So just a little bit of background before we get started. Sarah and I actually did our MBAs together at Haskayne, University of Calgary, many moons ago. I won't say how many years ago, Sarah. But Sarah has developed an illustrious career, both as a certified leadership coach as well as a change management guru. So, and I'll let you maybe speak to that a little bit more, Sarah. But she's worked in multiple industries, everything from oil and gas, professional services, nonprofit, government, agriculture, pharmaceutical.
Yo estoy aquí, estoy en una conferencia escuchando, pero
I'm just going to maybe ask people to actually, Sarah, I think you can do that. You can just mute everybody. Just don't mute me.
You know what? Erin's still the host, so.
Oh, okay.
Erin, can you do that?
Or actually, if everybody could just mute themselves.
Yeah.
So just for now, we will follow with Q&A, but as well as aviation. So Sarah teaches leaders across North America. In addition to an MBA, she's got a number of certifications. I can't count them all or remember them all, Sarah. So I will just I'll just leave that with you. Anyway, I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am for your time today. I know how much work you've put into this, as you do with everything that you do. Nothing is halfway with you. And so I just would like to pass it over to you and just and welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing your wisdom and your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. What a great introduction. That's really touching. I really appreciate it. So thank you, and welcome everybody. And I'll just share my screen. So hopefully everyone can see this. It does say on my end that participants can see my screen. So today we're going to talk about taking the work out of networking. And you know, a little bit about me. Some of you know me as Sarah Ditchburn, and some of you know me as Sarah Pointer. The reason for two names is my maiden name is Ditchburn, and my business is in Ditchburn, but I am married to a wonderful man named Norm Pointer. So that's where that comes from. We have a very diverse audience here today. We have a number of people who are participating in the amazing Higher Landing program, as well as some graduates. We have people signed up for this through the LinkedIn and other social media sites. And then I saw a few friendly faces on the list of people in my network and some of my dear friends who I think are here to support me today. So thank you. So we have 60 minutes and there will be time for Q&A. Melanie from Higher Landing has graciously offered to sort of monitor the chat, but I think we'll save questions to the end to ensure we get through the content. And tomorrow, Erin and the Higher Landing team will be sending out the handouts from the materials today. So expect to receive those in your inbox tomorrow so you can refer back. But I've also put my name and contact information at the bottom, and they'll be in the handouts. So if you have any lingering questions that we don't get to today, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Jackie has asked me about doing an intro, and I asked her to hold off a little bit because there's a method to my madness of why I'm going to do more about my background in a little while. But like Jackie said, we recently met. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. And, after spending, an hour or two with Jackie, which was a really great experience. And for those of you that have an opportunity to have a sort of a informal coaching session with Jackie, I encourage you to do it. She really helped me realize that, I'm a natural networker. I've been doing it all my life. It's just something that I do because I'm curious about people. I'm really interested in their stories and their backgrounds. And so I don't think of networking as work. And I appreciate not everyone on the phone or on the webinar today feels the same way, but hopefully I'll make it a little bit more manageable for you. So we'll just jump into what we're going to cover today. I was going to do an introductory exercise. But when I saw the number of participants, and I'm so thrilled we have so many people, there really wasn't time to do introductions, but I'm still going to walk you through the exercise because the point of it was really to help you start building your network in today's session. What more value could I give you than to be able to help you do that within the first 5 minutes? So I'll walk you through that. Everyone knows some of the stats around networking and how you find a job is really related to your network, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that and some of the stats I found in the research, as well as where I've seen it help my career. I'm going to take you through 5 tips. My husband really pushed me to get it down to 3, but I couldn't do it, so I apologize. But there's 5 great tips. And something I want you to think about as we go today, we had planned to have some time to do some action planning. And I don't think we'll get to that given the size of the group. And I really want to allow time for questions. But as we go today, take some notes and think about some of the tips and tricks that will work for you. They're not all going to work for you. You really need to think about your style, your preferences. So just choose a few and commit to acting on them. If you leave here after an hour and don't commit to doing anything differently, then you might feel like you wasted your hour. You won't change anything. So I encourage you to take notes, choose a few things, put them in your calendar, and tell a friend. Because if you write it down and you tell someone who will hold you accountable, you're more likely to see the goal through. So I encourage you to do that. So we'll jump in, maybe just a couple of things to be aware of. One is, this is a broad-based approach to networking, the tips and strategies you can use for pretty much any scenario. However, a dear friend of mine reached out to me who is networking with venture capitalists in California right now. And I would not say that I have expertise in networking with venture capitalists, but I think that the tips and strategies I'm going to show you today can apply to most situations. Secondly, there is a ton of research that says if you're going to go out and network, you have to be really clear on your purpose, your vision, your values. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And for those of you that are in the Higher Landing program, you're doing a ton of great work around that. And for those of you that aren't in the Higher Landing program, I encourage you guys to sign up. They have a great number of programs right now around resume writing, knowing your brand, pitching yourself. Many of them are free through government funding right now. And so they're a great opportunity to do that work around what's your purpose and your vision and your values. So think about doing that because there just wasn't time to do that in this session. So I really hope that you guys leave here today with a few things. One is, I really want you to feel more at ease with networking. I know it's easy for me to say because it comes naturally to me, but really it's about having a conversation. It's about building a relationship. And so I'm hoping that you'll leave here with increased confidence related to networking, and you'll be able to gain that by learning a number of different tips and strategies that resonate with you, that you feel comfortable trying. And given we've been kind of in lockdown for 2 years and many of us are thriving social interaction, I challenge you to kind of step outside your comfort zone and try a few things that maybe you wouldn't have done otherwise, because you have this great opportunity. People want to meet, people want to get together now. So think through the tips that I'm going to present, take some notes so that you can build a realistic plan at the end of this session. So I think this is a great quote to start with. Hopefully most of you know who Seth Godin is. He's a thought leader. He's an entrepreneur. He's a leadership coach. And he sends out a daily blog that I get, among many others. It's hard to keep up sometimes. But this was one from last week. Knock, knock, it was called. The purpose of most communication isn't to completely explain yourself. Too often we get stuck relieving tension, making our case, and closing the door on the discussion. The purpose is to open the door to interaction, learning, and action. So an appropriate response to knock knock would be, who's there? Communication is a process, not an event. This is my whole premise about networking. It's the same thing. It is about opening the door to interaction, to learning, to being curious, to providing support to others so that they can help us. And it's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. And hopefully you'll see that through our session today. So this was the activity that I had planned to do, and it was called Networking in Action. And what I wanted us to do, if we had a small group, was to introduce yourself by name, and then an interesting fact about yourself or something that you're interested in, not what you do or your title. And then I wanted you to outline some of the words and emotions, if you felt comfortable, that you feel when you hear the term networking. And so this is maybe a little bit different exercise than those of you might be used to in a facilitated session where you're asked to say your name, your role, and how long you've been in that role for. So why did I plan the introductions this way? And I'm sorry we don't have an opportunity to do it, but I really wanted you guys to start building your network now. And building your network really starts with finding out commonalities with one another. And the reason that finding commonalities with one another is so important is because when you find common interests, skills, or passions in other people, you're more likely to help them and they're more likely to help you. You're also more likely to remember them. So I'll give you an example. I am not a technical person at all. So if I met someone named John and the first thing he says to me is, "Hi, I'm John, I'm a reservoir engineer," I would probably jump in and say, "So John, what do you like to do in your spare time?" And he will tell me about some of his interests and his passions, I'm hoping. And he might say things like, "Well, in my spare time, I'd love to go to the gym and lift weights. I really enjoy wake surfing. I like to travel." All of those things are some of my interests. So I'm much more likely to remember him over the long term. And I'm much more likely, because of that common interest or that common experience, I'm more likely to help him, be curious about him, learn more about him. The other reason I wanted to start the discussion this way, aside from building your network now, I was really hoping you'd have a few new connections. And one way you can do that is to look through the chat, and if people's full names are in there, you could also send them a LinkedIn message. That's another way to expand your network right away. But I wanted you to see you can start any networking discussion in a more relaxed way. This is in a situation where small talk is perfectly okay. And usually when I'm meeting someone for the first time, I tend to have a few sort of very casual questions that I want to ask them to just get me into the flow of the conversation. So some good ones for this week might be, were you at the Stampede grounds? What events did you go see? What plans do you have for the summer? You need to find ways to break the ice with people. And this exercise was intended to do that, to just really break the ice and get to know people on a more personal level. And that's really what networking is about getting to know other people. I was hoping it would stir your curiosity to learn more. So maybe you'd meet someone on this webinar that has a similar interest. It spurs some interest for you to reach out to them on LinkedIn or social media, maybe even go meet with them. So I was hoping it would just entice you to follow up and start to build your network. And then finally, it was really about helping you experience a values-based approach to networking, which really means understanding commonalities, values, passions. I'm going to say this over and over today because it really helps you see that networking is really about building relationships, just like you would with a friend. And having a values-based approach to networking means stronger, more relevant, and more productive relationships. I'm more likely to help you if we have common interests and common experiences than if we don't. So I want to get to know more about you so we can help one another. Finally, the last part of the exercise was really to level set the emotions. So what shows up for you when you hear the term words and emotions? And I did this exercise with a group of friends, and I was really surprised to hear. I went in with a hypothesis that they would be all over the map, that some people would have a lot of anxiety with networking. Some people would just loathe it. Other people would love it. And my plan was to put a Wordle up to show you, or a word cloud, to show you the sort of differences, but I didn't find that. And I wonder how much COVID has impacted our need to be out and to be social. So that was my intent. The term networking elicits strong feelings, positive and negative. Some people swear by it, others swear at it. I thought that was kind of cute because there are people that really don't like it. And I truly sympathize with those that don't, because if you have a certain perspective about it, or you've had some bad experiences with it, you can be one of those people that swears at it. So a little about me. Jackie's done a great job, and you would have seen my bio. I don't think of networking as work at all. I network in ways that are comfortable for me. And for me, it's about one-on-one. And that's my preferred style. And that's because I really am curious in people's stories. And, some people will say I'm nosy, or some people will say I ask too many questions. In fact, sometimes I go out for lunch with friends or dinner with friends, and they'll say, Sarah, I left that conversation not knowing anything about what's new with you. And it was all about me. And that's because I'm genuinely curious. I'm not trying to be nosy. I've had 8 jobs in 18 years, all a result of my network. Now, part of the reason for that is I have 2 businesses. One is a change management consulting business, as Jackie has alluded to. So I do contracts with clients. So I've had 8 different contracts in 18 years. So maybe not a great stat if you're an employee, but a pretty good stat if you're a consultant. But every single one of my consulting engagements has come from my network without fail. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not out looking for contracts, but I'm always getting referred from people I know. I really have a passion for working with, and the second part of my business is, as Jackie alluded to, is I have a coaching business. And I really have a passion for working with leaders and individuals going through change, whether it's change forced on them or change that they're leading, and helping them see through sort of the forest through the trees, building a plan, helping them be accountable that plan. And that might be everything from promotion to a career pivot to suddenly I am, dealing with an elderly parent, and how am I going to navigate this in my already busy life? Help me build a plan. Or maybe I'm retiring and I want to do meaningful volunteer work. What does that look like? So that's sort of my kind of 2 areas of focus. But back to me and networking, I'm going to tell you a little story that kind of helps for those of you that are on this call that really are struggling with networking, but know you need to do it. As I've mentioned, I really prefer one-on-one. I don't like going to networking events. In fact, going to a cocktail party where I know I'm going to know no one I probably would even question going, because I don't feel comfortable in that space. So that's why I think it's really important that you figure out through the tips and strategies we'll talk about what will work for you. But I wanted to put myself as a credible speaker today in the shoes of people who are maybe less comfortable than me in networking. And so I decided to go to a networking event recently. And like many of you, I haven't been to one in 2 years. And I went to a lunch and learn downtown targeted at women. And I decided to wear a bright green sundress. And that may seem like an odd choice, but I did that so that I wouldn't feel comfortable in my own skin, that I'd maybe stand out a little bit, so that I wouldn't have the confidence I normally would when it comes to networking. So I got to the event early, which I always recommend you do, because if they don't send out the invite list in advance, or you don't know who's going, it's hard for you to know who you want to speak to, who you want to connect with. And so I go and I just do a scan of the name cards on the table. I was really hoping when I walked in that people would be mingling around and I get a chance to speak to a few people, but everyone had already sat down at their tables. So here I am in my bright green sundress. Everyone's in their very plain navy and nude suits, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I definitely felt out of my comfort zone. And I went right to the front of the room and asked 3 women sitting at a table if I could join them. Well, they're not going to say no. And as I sat down, introductions obviously quickly led to what do you do? And then we jumped into some things we're interested in and about the guest speaker we are hearing today. And I was able to connect with all three of them over LinkedIn while we're sitting at the table. And that wasn't something I had tried before, but we're so out of date with business cards, and probably our business cards are even out of date. I thought I'd just try it. And it was really quite easy to do that. And they were all really open to that. And what it also allowed me to do after the event is send them a follow-up note so that they'd remember me. And what I did in that follow-up note, aside from it was great to meet you, is I sent them a TED Talk of the speaker we had just seen. And the speaker we had just seen had technical difficulties. She was in New York about to do another book launch. And so she was calling in via Zoom, and we had a ton of technical issues. And so I sent them a TED Talk. And what that allowed me to do is give them something of value because they really enjoyed the presenter. We had limited time with the presenter, and it gives me a reason to follow up with them down the line. So it's simple as that. And it's for those of you that are introverts or don't like doing face-to-face, it's a good way to connect with people over social media. Anyway, so that was my story of my LinkedIn and or my session. I'm not sure I'd recommend the bright green sundress, but it was a way to put me in a different mindset and stand out in a crowd and really force myself to kind of step into my role and try and learn something from the event. The other thing that I did, and I'd recommend you do before any networking event, is to really have a clear outcome in mind or have a goal. And my goal was to meet 3 new people. Because if you don't set a goal or set the stage for those types of events, you might not get what you want out of it. And it helps you kind of focus the discussion. Once you've kind of shared about each other, once you've really engaged with them about them, once you've been interested in them, you can move into starting to talk about some of the reasons you might want to network. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But it just gives you a little focus. So bottom line, I think we all know the stats when it comes to networking. Everybody probably knows that most jobs are not posted. They're filled through networks. They're filled through employee referrals. But what's interesting, I thought, in some of these stats is that less than half say they keep in touch with their network. So they use it as a one-time event or reason to, perhaps they're looking for a job, they need a solution to something, but they don't actually till it like I till a garden. And yet what we heard from the quotes and what we'll see through the rest of my presentation is networking isn't just an event. It's an ongoing process and needs to be part of your DNA. The other interesting quote for me was that 40% of LinkedIn subscribers access it daily, which generates 1 billion plus interactions a month. So that was really interesting to me when you think about, to the left-hand side of the screen, the impact to performance of having an effective network. And all of the research would say, and I've seen it in my own career, that the value of having a network really does increase productivity. And you think about that if you're looking for a job, if you need information, if you need ideas, if you need to be connected with someone for some information about someone, if you have a network, that's a lot easier to do. Obviously, having a network provides you with more opportunities, more career opportunities more often. But what I find it's really beneficial for, in addition to the career piece and related to the career piece, is the sense of collaboration, the idea sharing, the access to intellectual capital. So if you're an employee in an organization and you have a strong network and you can reach out to other people in other similar or dissimilar organizations to get solutions to things, that adds to your social capital or to your value to your current organization. If you're a consultant, sometimes that can be a lonely place. My network is my intellectual capital. That's where I go for solutions, advice, and guidance. So there is a value to your network. And so like any other portfolio, like your relationships, like your investment portfolio, you need to continue to invest in it. So a little story about perseverance in the networking department. We all know about Starbucks. We all know about Colonel Sanders and KFC, as we all, I'm sure, have read a Dr. Seuss book in our time. these three individuals, these leaders, all had to do extensive networking to get their businesses off the ground. And I think it's just important to just take a step back and listen to their stories, because again, they'll reinforce to you that it's not a one-time event, it's a process. And you think about some of the world's most successful people like Howard Schultz or Colonel Sanders, they all had to do extensive networking. So here's the stories. Howard Schultz, who's the CEO of Starbucks, to raise money for his first 3 stores, spoke to 242 investors and banks. 217 said no. KFC, so when Colonel Sanders was trying to sell his chicken recipe, he spoke to 1,009 restaurants before someone bought his recipe. And then finally, Dr. Seuss spoke to 27 publishers before it was published. It now sells 11,000 books a day in the US alone. So if you have some bad experiences with networking, or you have some bad memories, or maybe you had a networking meeting or went to a networking event yesterday, last week, last year, and it didn't go so well, I really encourage you to remember these stories, because sometimes it does take perseverance and it is an ongoing event. So let's get into the tips. So there's 5 tips that we're going to talk about today. The first one is about having the right perspective. The second is about having a mutually beneficial plan, and this arguably could be in 2. The third is having a growth or a coaching open mindset. Fourth is about ensuring you're following up, and following up stat, as I say. And finally, making it part of your DNA. So let's talk about the reframe bit first. And I'm going to read you a quote here that I thought would really appeal to those of you who think networking is horrendous and you'd rather just hide in a corner. Does your mouth get dry and chalky at the very mention of the task? Are your palms sweaty at the mere thought of heading into a room full of strangers to introduce yourself? Well, I have news for you. Pretty much everybody thinks networking is painfully awkward. I get it. Needing to paste on a name tag and make small talk about how bad the free wine is cringeworthy at best. But here's the thing. Networking doesn't have to be awful. In fact, most of us hate it because we approach it with a totally wrong perspective. And that's a quote by Kat Bugard. And if anyone, she wrote an article about it, but I loved her perspective. And, I wonder how much people's opinions about networking have changed given our pandemic and being locked down. But if you have barriers towards networking, I really encourage you to spend some time thinking about what those are and why you have them. And this is a very heavy single bullet, and we're not going to solve it all here today. For those of you in the higher landing program, you do some of this work. But I really encourage you to think about what is holding you back from networking. Even the term networking to me it makes it sound bigger and more formal than it is. But, I had an information interview a few weeks ago, and I had reached out to a colleague to talk to her about coaching, and it was not a great experience. I'm not going to lie. And this is a one-on-one conversation, what I like to do. And I felt like she was really hard on me, quite critical. And I left there and I had an hour till I had to go to that networking event I just told you about. And in my head, I was creating these stories. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at networking. I'm not good at information interviews. I should just stop while I'm ahead. I'm just going to go back to what I've always done. And when I took some time to really kind of break that down, what this person was doing wasn't being hard on me. She was trying to help me. She was trying to teach me some lessons. And so I encourage you guys to sort of reflect back on your experience with networking. And if there has been some bad experience, are you creating some stories in your head? And if you need some help with that, there's lots of tools to do that. You can reach out to me. If you're in the higher landing program, there's lots of tools, but really break down what's holding you back. Then determine approaches that feel most comfortable. And I've got a list of them on the next slide, so we'll get to those in a minute. But not every type of networking approach is going to work for you, and nor should it. Everyone has different styles, different comfort levels. So pick 1 or 2 that you could even take a stab at using and see how it goes for you. Think of it as a regular conversation. Think of it as an opportunity to learn, to lean in, to ask questions, to be interesting versus be interested versus interesting. Don't go into it as a means to an end. I have to find a job. I have to get a name. I have to get a phone number. I have to get funding. Go into it as you would a regular conversation with a friend. And if you want some practice on that, start with your friends in your existing network. People are more than happy to help you. And then the last comment on this line talks about dormant ties. And those are people that you haven't connected with in a long, long time. And you'd be surprised what can happen when you reach out to those dormant ties. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One is I met with a fellow coach a few weeks ago for lunch, and she sat down at lunch and I said, Erin, thank you so much for meeting with me. I don't think you and I have connected in 15 years. So I really appreciate you meeting with me. And she said, Sarah, you're the one who deserves the thank you. And I sort of looked at her shocked. She said, you launched my coaching career. You had me come into your team. I was a leader in an oil and gas company, and do a values exercise. And that launched my coaching business. And I was able to have the confidence to leave a job I didn't like. And now I've got a thriving coaching and leadership development program. So I was hesitant to reach out to her. Don't be. Reach out to people, ask for help, and help them. Always help them. Seek out those with shared values and mutual interests. You know, I've attended a few of the higher landing programs, and they're phenomenal for those of you. And I've said it once and I'll say it again. I really encourage people to participate in those. But they really talk a lot about, you know, being curious about individuals, asking how you can help the other person, really trying to understand what are your shared or common interests, because then you're more likely to help one another. This was a great quote in a book I read called Your Network is Your Net Worth by Porter Gale. And I'm going to, I'll refer to her again. But one of her clients said, reframe unemployment as fun employment, a time to learn, meet people, get back to your roots, or find something new. And, you know, I totally understand if you're in the throes of career transition, you're feeling anxious of finding your next piece, your next role. But really, there's so much growth and opportunity that happens in what I call that liminal stage, that time of between knowing and not knowing and figuring out what you want to do, that if you're curious to it and curious to what may be the next role for you that really engages your heart and your secret sauce, use this as an opportunity when you're not working, because you so rarely get it when you are. So networking tips. So how will you network? And there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. And I've listed some, and I'm sure there's many others. I prefer one-on-one, as I've mentioned. There's events, and you guys would know most of these. What's changed with COVID is there's more virtual events. Now, I would say that those aren't as great for networking in the type of networking I like to do, because I like to have those deep conversations with people. But you can still network with people virtually. And how you do that is by really engaging in the screen, being curious, asking open-ended questions, linking them in, sending them a message on social media, following their accounts. There's still ways you can build that network. There's in-person events are starting again. There's meetups, there's industry association meetings, there's lunch and learns like I recently went to. And you know, the other thing that you can do, and hopefully there's no judgment here, but my husband and I go on Wednesday nights to our local restaurant. It's all people our age. It's a great place to network. We meet new people there all the time. So think about the things that you like to do, what you're already doing in your life, and pick one or two things and think how you might apply that to networking. There's obviously information interviews. The research says that wellness activities and airplane/airport lounges are great places to network. And if you're comfortable on a golf course or in a squash course or at the gym, I encourage you to use those as places to network. I have a good friend who's a realtor, and his best client he met at the gym. And this is an individual who buys and sells multiple properties. So you just never know when you connect through shared interests, shared passions, and get to know people on a more personal level, how they're able to help you and how you're able to help them because you have more of a connection. All the social media sites, I included Pinterest on there because there's communities on there. Don't hesitate to like and share people's posts. Even celebrities, even authors, they're putting stuff out there. They want feedback. They want it shared. Professional associations I've talked about, volunteering. So one of my clients is the Calgary Airport Authority, and pre-COVID, they had a thriving, absolutely thriving white hat volunteer program. You've all seen them at the airport. They're typically retired individuals with a white hat and red vest. They had so many networking opportunities. They're meeting people from all over the world, different cultures, different languages, different skill sets, different interests. What a great place to build relationships, meet new people, expand your network. And then there's obviously more, but there's some combination of the above. So as you guys are taking some notes, look through this list, and these will be in your handout, but what are one or two things that you can wrap your head around trying out? And again, like I said at the beginning, step outside your comfort zone. People are more than willing to meet right now because we have been so constrained over the last few years. So I challenge you to pick one you're comfortable doing and one maybe you're not so comfortable doing. Okay, mutually beneficial plans. So develop a plan, break it down into small chunks. I'm going to start there. If you're in transition and you have a ton of work to do as far as thinking about your brand, updating your resume, out networking, break it down into small chunks. It becomes unmanageable otherwise. For those in the higher landing program, use your IPs, research the individual teams, organizations that you're going to meet with, whether it's one-on-one or at networking events in advance. Ensure that your online presence is appropriate and consistent. And I know Jackie mentions this a lot, and it's so true. Don't have political rants on there or criticisms or give your opinion about COVID and COVID vaccines or our prime minister. There's so much online about that, and it really doesn't help our cause. And make sure everything that's out there is really consistent. You want people who you're going to meet or have met to see what you're after or what you're looking for or what you're trying to achieve. You don't want them to have to figure it out. That's work, and they'll be less likely to help you. Consider how to be of service to them. How can you help them? It's got to be mutually beneficial. And I encourage you to always close out any conversation or dialogue with, what can I do to help you? How can I connect you with people? Don't assume if they don't have a big title, they can't be helpful. There is a lot of people out there that are influencers. You only have to look at Instagram, executive assistants. People have information and networks. Don't assume they don't. And then this is kind of a random one, but a learning for me is, if you're going to have a one-on-one meeting or a meeting with a team, validate the duration. All too often we assume half an hour or an hour. I learned that the hard way recently. Don't assume the time, and confirm, because things might have changed when you booked it. So Vusi Tampakwao is a social capitalist, venture capitalist, an entrepreneur, a speaker out of South Africa, and he summed up everything I've said in a really quick video clip. So I'm going to show it to you because he has some great messages.
I have three. Number one, develop a network, not only for its ability to feed you, but your ability to feed it. We often think of networks as people who can elevate us. We never think of networks as people we can elevate. And for me, it's really important to understand that networks only exist when there is a mutual beneficiation in that relationship. And if you don't figure out your role in how the other person benefits, even if they have something you don't, odds are you're going to be a very poor network. So what I'm saying is, many people go into the network and go, I need, without asking, what can I give in return? And if you figure out what is your give, you'll get a very strong get, right? That's the first. The second is, be honest. Just be honest. Be yourself. If you're coming from a particular perspective where you're challenged or whatever the issue is, be honest. And you'll be very surprised how forgiving people are when you're honest. And the third is, network with a purpose. It's not enough to say, I need to know so-and-so, but it's really important to know why you need to know them and let them know why you need to know them. Because people with whom we network are busy. They have their own lives and their own things they're doing. And if there is a lack of clarity on your part, odds are that networking is not going to go very far. So be clear on why you want to build it.
So I love that. He's so articulate, and I feel like it took me 10 minutes to say the same thing. But you need to feed your network if you expect to be fed. Be honest about what you're looking for and what you need, and then be quite purposeful with them about why they need to know you and why you need to know them. So I think he's great. He's got some other great clips I encourage you guys to look at. Okay, so just wondering if there we go. So mindset. You guys have probably heard a lot about mindset. It's been in the media. It's kind of the latest buzzword, this growth mindset. But I think it's true for networking. Always begin by asking about them. And going back to the very beginning, what I said, this is where small talk's okay. How are they? How has their summer been? Do they have fun at Stampede? And I apologize, there might be some people here who are not from Calgary, but I think many of us from Calgary are super excited we finally got a Stampede. Use a coaching mentality. So ask open-ended questions, be curious, and you can prepare all of this in advance, whether you're going to an event, whether you're going to a trade show, whether you're doing one-on-one, you can write down all of these questions, even your small talk questions, if that makes you feel more comfortable. Don't be afraid to ask who else you should speak to, especially if you're at these types of events or you're doing an information interview. People expect that. Offer to connect them with others you know. If you will give, you'll receive. It's all about social giving. And I've said this a few times, part of that growth mindset and continuous learning is stepping outside of your comfort zone. Try something new. Follow up and follow up stats. So thank them in person and through email, or send them a LinkedIn request and a message. Follow up on social media like I did at that event. I've added in here a personal note. I think if people go above and beyond for you, I think a handwritten note is still appropriate and something that so many of us don't receive anymore. But I appreciate that that's a comfort thing and perhaps how you were raised. My son who's 18 would probably never write a thank you note. It would all be through Snapchat or something like that. Where you can, take notes immediately after the meeting. If you can during the meeting, I had 2 client meetings today where they're new clients, and I said, hey, I'm just going to take some notes on my computer. Now, this was all over Zoom. They were okay with that. It's not always possible, but it allows you to kind of follow up with things and specific things that they said in the meeting or at the event. And we're so busy and multitasking and overstimulated right now, it helps you not forget. If you've committed to doing something for them, do it right away. So I always block time on my calendar after any kind of information interview or event to kind of follow up. Pass on something to help them. So like I did with the TED Talk, maybe they mentioned an article, or maybe they mentioned something they're challenged with, or maybe, I had an example last week where a friend of mine is working with a client. They're looking for a certain type of individual to join their team. I asked for the job description so I could send it out to my network. Mark time in your calendar to follow up in the future. If you don't, if you think it, but don't ink it, as my husband will say, it doesn't happen. So make sure you do have some follow-up, and always help them make connections to help them grow their network. By helping them grow their connections, you're helping build your muscle, and working a muscle enables it to grow, and you'll become more confident and better at it over time. And finally, it needs to be part of your DNA. Like Porter Gale says, in our global networked economy, you can't allow your social capital to lie dormant. You need to reinvest it. So don't stop when you've got the job, or when you found the solution to the problem, or you've met the person that you need to meet. Think about ways to make it part of your DNA, whether it's putting it in your calendar. One of the things I do is I go into LinkedIn every day. I'm fascinated by what's on LinkedIn and the learning that I get, but that's my style. And maybe for you, it's to set some goals and have 1 or 2 goals a month about how to tilt that network. Like I've mentioned before, follow people and thank them for their posts, reshare, mark it in your calendar. Don't just think it, ink it. So making it part of your DNA is easy for me to say. So this is where I said, think about your action plan. What are you going to do and try? Reevaluate how it went, and then follow up. Because really following up will continue to build that relationship with that person. And that's what this is all about. The new form of networking is not about climbing a ladder to success. It's about collaboration, co-creation, partnerships, and long-term value-based relationships. So as I suspected, we don't have time to get to the action plan, but these will be in your handouts. And I like this sort of contract idea. So in order to support the development of networking skills, I, Sarah Ditchburn Pointer, will complete the following actions by August 15th. And having a few things and putting it in your calendar and signing it. And the other thing you can do is print this page and post it to your mirror. If you look at it every day, it's more likely to happen. And don't forget to find an accountability partner. Who knows, you might find one here. Here's a few ideas for those of you who are like, I don't even know where to start. Oh my God, she's holding me accountable to do networking. And I came to this because I really hate it and I know I should do it and I don't want to do it. Okay, if you're one of those people who really doesn't like it, then look at your LinkedIn connections that are friends. Reach out to 3 of them and make a date to go for coffee or do a virtual Zoom. Post a question on LinkedIn to generate new contacts that may have the same interests as you. Remember, it's about common interests. Expand your internal network. If you're in an organization or you're a real estate agent or you're an independent consultant, reach out to people in other specialties and book time with them to learn what they're doing. I love this one. Hold a mastermind group. Bring a small group of interesting people together that don't necessarily have the same jobs or professions, but you think might be interested in meeting each other, and have a group and get together and talk about common interests. Commit to meeting people at a networking event. And next time you meet someone new, I challenge you all not to ask them what they do as the first question out of the gate. Ask them about their favorite sports, hobbies, or interests. So that's the bulk of what I had to do today. I wanted to leave time for questions. I hope you guys leave here with a little bit more ease around, or less anxiety around networking, that it actually can be fun if you think about it as a learning, as about building a relationship, about being curious, about continual growth. There's a pile of tips in here. If nothing resonated with you, please reach out to me and I'm happy to share some more, because I really want you guys to leave here today with something that'll work for you. But please commit to doing a realistic plan, putting something down on paper to expand your network, meet with some new people, meet with some dormant ties, meet with some friends you haven't seen, and talk about some common interests and see where it goes. Huge thank you to Higher Landing. So gracious of you to host me and to be supportive of me. I think this company is fantastic. If you guys don't follow them on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do it because they've got some great programs. And then last but not least, here's a barcode, assuming it'll work. I did test it with my contact information. If you do have some follow-up questions, all of the information is below and will be in the handouts. But I'll maybe stop sharing there. And Melanie, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the chats. Oh, I can see it now.
So I was just going to say, can you see the chat? Because you have one from Bernadine and one from T Berry.
Oh, okay. So I'll start with Bernadine. And then if anyone else has questions, feel free to put them in the chat or use the reaction button to raise your hand. It's just at the bottom of the screen. So Bernadine's question, would volunteering in areas that build work experience be best, or would networking in any field be just as beneficial? Well, I think, Bernadine, that's a great question. And I think there's probably 2 answers to that. I would say both are equally good. I think and it sort of depends on where you're at. If you're at a stage in your career where you're really wanting to build your technical skills, your knowledge, and your network in your profession, then volunteering in areas that build your work experience is probably best. But like the white hatters who work at the airport, and I use them as an example because they stand out and everyone knows who they are. Now they're in a different place. Most of those people are retired. But doing networking in any field, as long as you have some common interests or common values, I think you're going to get something out of it. You never know who you're going to meet. So this might not be the best example, but if you go to Starbucks every day for your same latte, and instead switch to DeVille or Monogram coffee, for those of you who know what that is, you might try a different coffee. You might meet someone in line. Shaking it up is good. Now I have the confidence to do that. So another add-on to the answer would be if you're more comfortable in doing it in your work environment, your work setting and your profession, start there, build your muscle and then expand. But I would encourage you to step outside your box, Bernadine, and do it outside your profession if you feel comfortable with that. Okay, I only see
There was one from T Berry. Do you want me to? I can. Oh, mind you, haven't said that.
I see it's the fantastic presentation, Sarah.
Yes.
That one. Okay.
Yes, it's not. Yeah, it's not really asking you anything. It's just saying, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, Cynthia Holmes has a question. So thanks, Cynthia. And Bernadine, I see you asked another question, so I'll get to that. I want to host a networking event for local small women business owners in my suburb. Any icebreakers, ideas, or ideas for interesting speakers? Wow, that's awesome. That's a great question. Gosh, off the top of my head, the ideas for interesting speakers, I would think about, Cynthia, I don't know the type of the types of businesses they're in, but it might be interesting to ask them in advance, like what are some of the challenges they're facing post the COVID era and some things that they might need help with. So I'll give you an example. I used to run a little company when I was a new mom called Mummy Mode, and I would bring in guest speakers to speak to women working in the home and women working outside of the home. And the concept was to break down barriers between stay-at-home moms and working moms, to share ideas and tips for raising children, and also to get out of the house once a month to meet interesting women and to listen to speakers and topics about topics that were of interest to mom to help with their education and their continuous growth. How I determined those speakers was asking them at each event, what are some things that are top of mind for them? What are things that they're keeping them up at night? What are some challenges that they're facing? And you might be surprised to see some of the common themes that come out. Ideas for interesting speakers. I'm assuming that's in Calgary, but I guess that doesn't matter because it would be over Zoom. But again, that might come from just surveying out to them about some of those other topics. Sorry, Cynthia, I can't think off the top of my head, but let me sleep on that because I'm sure I do my best thinking at 3 a.m, like a lot of women. And let me think of what I can, if you just want to follow me on LinkedIn or send me an email, then I can answer that. But there's lots of great speakers you could have come in and talk about, what are some a small business that's done some great things post-COVID and how they've navigated COVID, what they've learned from that experience. You could have them come in and talk about sort of the latest trends in their specific industries. But I appreciate I'm not giving you the best answer. So let me take that one away. Bernadette, any advice on introverts who are mentally exhausted after a networking event? What are some tips for spending time to recover before doing follow-up with people? Oh, sorry, I should be reading this out loud to everybody. Any advice on introverts who are mentally exhausted after a networking event? What are some tips for spending time to recover before doing follow-up with people we met at events? Great question. And Bernadine, and sorry, I might have said your name wrong beforehand, but that's an excellent question. And I am an extrovert. And honestly, as I get older, I feel like I'm becoming more of an introvert because when I spent a lot of time with people, I totally need that recharge. So I completely understand that. So what I do is I'm a big fan of exercise. For me, it's great for mental health. So I might go for a walk. I might go for a run on my treadmill. But if I'm mentally exhausted, but I feel like I should follow up, and I think you're probably responding to my comment follow-up stat. What I mean by that is don't lose sight of it. Like if it's a day or two later, that's fine. I just like to do it to get it done and not forget. So if you need that recharge time, figure out what your recharge is like. Because it's not exercise for everyone. Sometimes people just want to sit on the couch and watch a Netflix episode. I get that. Some people want to have a nap. But I'd encourage you to get outside, have a walk, think about it, spend some time alone, and whatever else you might do to recharge. But all my point was about that is just follow up within a day or two. So hopefully you'd be recharged by then. Brian Jameson, I would assume you have a large number of contacts. How do you groom this list, and what percent of contacts do you spend most of your networking time? So yeah, I don't know what the number large is, and that's not your question. I do have a large number of contacts, but to your point, some of them are very kind of remote, and I don't spend a lot of time on my contact list. I do on that broader group. I spend time with contacts that are in my profession or an area of my profession I want to get into, or an area I think I'm going to evolve to as I think about my future and retirement and what my, encore career might look like. But it's really kind of tied to what is your vision for your work, your life. And that's how I tie into it. So I have a number of contacts in the fitness world because I really love lifting weights. I don't know why, I just really do. It's said to Bernadine's point, it's a great time to kind of decompress, be away from the world, have some time by myself. So I have contacts that are in the fitness world. I have people that are in the change management world. And there's a handful in each of those that I really spend a lot of time with because I've built those common relationships with those common interests. But I am trying to be more thoughtful on LinkedIn and Instagram about responding to people's posts and sharing people's posts to kind of till that network. So I call that kind of the peripheral network, or, there's probably a better term for it than dormant ties, but they're people that are a bit more peripheral that I want to stay connected to in case I ever need to reach out to them, but I'm not actively tilling them. So I would say it's a good handful of people in each of the spaces I'm interested in and the people I want to be interested in. So that that's not so overwhelming, I probably have a dozen change management consultants. I really value and cherish their capability and their skill set. So before COVID, I organized events once or twice a year where we all came together. No one else organized those events. I did it to stay connected, and everyone really appreciated it, but that wasn't their thing. So long-winded answer, handful in each areas of my life. It's tied to kind of my purpose, my values, and my vision. And then I have that peripheral group of people that I stay connected with more remotely. So Brian, reach out to me if I didn't answer your question, because that's a big one. Trina, long lost friend, how are you? I just went onto a QR app. I Googled create a free QR code. I can't remember the site. And I entered my name, my contact information, and it created a barcode all for free. So if I can find the site, I'll send it off to you. Any other questions? We're at 4 o'clock. I'm happy to stay on if people have more questions. Doesn't sound like it, and I don't see any reactions, but that might not mean that I don't see them. Melanie, are you seeing anything that I should be paying attention to?
No, I'm just seeing a few, thank yous, and you're awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think the questions have stopped now. Great presentation, I think most of them are saying.
So Ryan has a great question, and I appreciate that some people might have to jump off. So if you have to jump off, that's okay. Don't forget the handouts will be coming. I did have a feedback survey that somehow I messed up today, so I'll try and work on that. And Erin promised to send that out because I'd love your feedback. Ryan, your question is excellent. For those that feel stuck, what should be their first step? And I would say, and I'm sorry if that wasn't clear in my presentation, I think if you feel stuck, identify why you feel stuck if you can. That's a difficult thing to do. I appreciate, especially if you're doing it on your own. And then secondly, think about, what do you need to get out of networking at this particular moment in your life? And maybe it's to find a job, maybe it's to find a solution, but based on that, choose one of the approaches that you're most comfortable with and go test it on a friend and say, I'm trying to build my networking skills. This is how I might approach it. What's your feedback? And that's where I would start. But if there's people on the line that are still going, okay, I don't even know where to start. This was overwhelming. It was too much content. I appreciate there was a lot. Feel free to reach out to me through Higher Landing. I'm happy to have a chat with you on the call or through my contact information. I'm happy to chat with you about it because I definitely don't want people leaving here without some first few steps. I love this, Scott. Anyone feel free to link in with me. Scott Pennell. Good job. That's awesome. Thanks, Scott. And Jackie, I see you have a question. I'm going to link in with you, Scott. Watch out. How would I define? So Jackie's asked Sarah, how would you define networking? Exactly. Wow. You know, I'm verbose. I think networking is just about building mutually beneficial relationships. I think that's what it comes down to. And that makes it less scary. Mutually beneficial relationships based on common interests, values, and goals. Do you want to add to that, Jackie? Because I know you've got some great insights on this topic, and I know you're a good networker.
Sorry, I'm just in transit, Sarah. This has been awesome. So you've said something I thought was rather poignant, and that was to build mutually rewarding relationships. So that's, I guess, where you're assuming that people want to build mutually rewarding relationships. So I guess if somebody doesn't believe that relationships are necessary, I guess those are the ones that are going to really struggle with networking. I know that that kind of sounds a bit crazy, but there are some people that I know we've had in our program who are such extreme introverts, and just the thought of building a quote unquote relationship scares the you know what out of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would just like you to comment on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great add and a great question because, yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts to your question. One is where people don't see, don't want sort of mutually beneficial relationships, or two, you know, they have so much fear that it's sort of paralyzing for them. And so,
well, they don't understand the value of it. I guess that's more it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if they're struggling with the value, I'd be curious to explore that more with them. Because, you know, everything that we see is the value of a network is so helpful in your life. But if they've been successful without having a network, or they've achieved the things they want to achieve without having a network, well, that's great intel, because what are they doing that us networkers need to know about, and how do we learn from that? I think if you're, you know, introvert that really doesn't like to meet people or go to one-on-one events, I think the safe place to build your network is through the online tools like a LinkedIn, where you can just hit a like button. You don't even need to comment, or you can message someone somewhat anonymously and test that out and see how it goes. And that's a way to just learn. Like, maybe you feel awkward even reaching out, but you could simply say, I like your post, and start there. And
so starting in the safe zone, then something really benign.
Yeah, build up your muscle that way.
And I noticed that this is especially difficult for some people, some of our clients that are from other countries. And just the whole notion of quote unquote networking is a completely overwhelming thought.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's a really great point. And I'm, you know, a Calgarian that was born here and lived here most of my life. Like, that may be a great opportunity, Jackie, to sit down with, you know, a cohort of people from different cultures and backgrounds and talk about sort of some of the challenges they face and how we might help them with those, right? Because we do have a kind of a mired view based on our business experience in Canada. So it would be great to hear some challenges or some perspectives they have. I think it's a great observation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, as always. Okay. Hi, Sarah. I'm wondering how we should go about if we want to connect with someone on LinkedIn. So Wing, I think that's sort of a bit of a tag on to Jackie's question, and a great question. So for me, I would just send them a connect notice, but it's easy for me. And I think Jackie's point is, depending on your culture and your experience and your background, or your introversion, extroversion style, that might not be easy for you. So, you know, maybe an easier way to do it for people like that is, instead of being bold and just hitting connect, it might be to like a few of their posts. And then if you feel sort of comfortable doing that, then maybe sending a connect. And if you're even comfortable with that, sending them a message with that connect about why you want to connect with them. So take it slowly. Just step into it. Remember, I said break it down into chunks, break it down into a plan. But I typically, if you're asking me how I do it, Wing, I just send them a LinkedIn request. I hit request and I send them a note. And if they're one of those people that you can't connect with unless you have a connection, I try and look at our mutual connections and ask someone to connect me, and why I want them to connect. But like I said, it's easy for me to do that. So I think if you're uncomfortable doing it, start out just liking some of their posts. And then you can, even before you ask them to connect, you could send them an instant message on LinkedIn about why you want to connect with them. That's less personal than a face-to-face meeting. And the worst thing that people can do is say no. Remember that. But they don't typically say no. So don't assume the worst outcome. And you know, where you can, I know it's hard if you come from different culture and experience, but do try and stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. So try a few of those, Wing, and let me know how it goes. And I'll give you more tips if it doesn't work. Darlene, is it appropriate to reach out to people that are one of your contacts on LinkedIn for information, but you don't actually know them? I say 100%. I do it all the time. And I usually couch it with, hey, Paul, you know, we actually haven't met. I've been following your posts for a long time. I really liked post X, so that they know you have some contact. I see that one of your subject areas is X. Would you be open to setting up a Zoom call to chat about it? This is what I'm hoping to do. You know, again, Darlene, the worst thing that people can do is say no. The only challenge with doing that through LinkedIn is not everyone's on LinkedIn all the time. So if you don't get a response, then try and find their email address and send them an email. The challenge with that, of course, is sometimes it goes to junk. So the other option is to go through one of your mutual connections. I know Higher Landing shows you how to do that, but it's right above a person's, or right below their bio. This is where you can find your mutual connections and reach out to them and say, hey, John, I want to reach out to Paul because he seems to have information on X, Y, and Z. Do you think he'd be open to that? Can you send him a note, or do you have a relationship with them? Okay, and then Ira, I'm probably going to say your last name wrong. I apologize. Jairath is happy to connect with everyone on LinkedIn too, so I'll point that out. Bernadine, I love the video you shared from Boosie. Yeah, maybe reframing how we might be of help to someone else will help some of us get out there into the network. Yeah, love that, Bernadine. And he said it so eloquently. And, you know, if you go in thinking about how you can help others, they're more likely to help you. It's tried and true for sure. So for those of you that maybe don't need to network right now, this is a good time to practice. Maybe reach out to a few people that you're just interested in and practice it before you actually need something and see how it goes. Darlene O'Neill, great. Another person asking to connect on LinkedIn. See, you guys are all experience enhancing your network as we go. I love it. Sarah, here's my profiles. I cannot find a few of you folks here taking the lead here, friends. Oh, Sarah, I love the slow approach. Although if I may be bold, here's my profile as I cannot find a few of you folks taking the lead here, friends. And Trina's put in her LinkedIn. So Wing, there you go. You've got an opportunity right here. Someone said that you can link in with them, Trina, and I know Trina, she's great. Scott Pinnell and Ira have all said, reach out to me on LinkedIn. For those of you who are really nervous about networking, or it's not part of your upbringing or your cultural experience, you've got some friendly faces here. So I encourage you to jump in.
Sarah, I have a quick question.
Okay.
What advice would you give to somebody who, say, has had a really negative networking experience where, you know, they felt traumatized from it, and now they're deathly afraid of making further connections? What advice would you have for somebody like that?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to that one big bullet I had on the very first Reframe slide about really identifying your barriers. And I think if you've been traumatized and you really can't get your way out of that traumatic experience, I think that's where you need to seek the help of a coach or a psychologist that can kind of help you break that down. Because sometimes we can't get out of our own head or out of our own stories, and especially if it's trauma related. So that's what I'd encourage people to do.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Is that, Jackie, is that something that people in higher landing can do with their coaches?
Yes, to an extent. That's not the main role of coaches. The coaches are mainly to take them through a change management process.
Okay.
However, you know, because so many of our clients are in job search mode, and it's hard for them to reach out of their comfort zones and to even make a connection with somebody on LinkedIn. And it could be something as benign as that, where there's really no physical contact, but then they end up taking it personally, where, you know, the fact that they're not getting responded to is, you know, they don't like me, they don't want me, you know, I'm never going to get a job, so they just give up.
Yeah.
And whether it's LinkedIn or phone or any other kind of connection.
Yeah. And, you know, that's why I kind of gave those stories of, you know, Howard Schultz. And I know he's a very successful and kind of out of our realm, and comes from a different cultural experience as well. And I do appreciate that LinkedIn or sending an email or a phone call, if it doesn't get anywhere, it can be really, really deflating. But I think you need to keep trying and trying different approaches. And all of us have some connections with some people. And if I can help anyone on this call make a connection, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you want to practice on me and sending me a LinkedIn request, I'm more than happy to accept it and help direct you. So, you know, practice with, remember I said, practice with friends, practice with your existing network. And if you're new to Canada and don't have an existing network, tag the people that have mentioned their names here, and we'll all commit to connecting back with you. I think that's the least all of us can do. Are there any more questions? Sounds like that might be it. So I really, you know, you guys have been a great audience. I know that there's a ton of content, and I know it's one thing for me to say, do all these things. It's another thing for you individually to put it into practice. So if there's anything more I can do to make it easier on you, please don't hesitate to send me a note, because that feedback is helpful for me as well. And for those in the higher landing program, please leverage your peers and your cohort. Those are great people to start with building your network. There's names on this chat, as I mentioned, and I'm more than happy to help you as well.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time. This has just been an absolute gift to our clients, and I'm sure that everybody learned more than they were expecting. So thank you so much for the valuable insights and for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom. I'm hoping that you'll come back.
For sure, I'll come back. Absolutely. Sign me up. It was fun for me too. And I look forward to the feedback so we can make it even better the next time. So
well, and the next thing all of us want to know is how can we help you, and who can we connect you to?
Okay, well, I will.
Something for you to think about.
Yeah. Jennifer Aniston. I've always had a thing for her.
I can't help you with that one, unfortunately.
Okay, well, thank you guys. And I really did enjoy doing this. So I look forward to seeing you guys all again soon and doing this again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Sarah. This was great.